Hello and welcome to Earthly Explorer, a calm space where we slow down, breathe deeply, and wander through the timeless story of our planet. Tonight, we step back more than 250 million years, to a time when Earth was healing from its greatest catastrophe, and when the first dinosaurs began to stir in the long arc of life's history. This is the Triassic period, the opening act of the Mesozoic era, an age that would one day be called the Age of Reptiles. But here, at its beginning, the Earth was still fragile, raw, and remaking itself in ways both terrifying and beautiful. The Triassic begins in the shadow of devastation. At the close of the Permian period, around 252 million years ago, Earth endured the Great Dying, the most severe extinction in history. Over 90% of marine species and 70% of land vertebrates vanished. The seas were emptied of coral reefs, trilobites, and countless fish. On land, lush forests withered, and entire families of animals disappeared. The Earth itself had turned hostile, shaken by volcanic eruptions, poisoned by gases, and suffocated by warming oceans. When the dust settled, the planet was quiet, too quiet. Survival was fragile, ecosystems threadbare. Yet from this silence came opportunity. The first chapters of the Triassic are worlds of resilience. Life that endured began to creep back, tentatively filling the void. Strange reptiles roamed barren landscapes, ancestors of crocodiles and turtles. Amphibians, survivors from earlier ages, clung to rivers and lakes. Plants returned, modest at first, ferns, cycads, and conifers pushing through as forests re-emerged. The Earth's surface itself was different. All the continents were fused together into one colossal landmass, Pangaea, stretching from pole to pole. This supercontinent created climates both extreme and unfamiliar. The vast interior baked in searing heat and dryness, deserts sprawling across its heart. Along the coasts, monsoons drenched forests with seasonal rains. Earth was divided sharply, scorched deserts, humid coasts, icy poles, a world of contrasts and challenges. In this raw environment, the seeds of the future were sown. Among reptiles, new groups began to rise. The archosaurs, a lineage that would give us crocodiles, pterosaurs, and in time, dinosaurs. At first, they were small and unassuming, lizard-like creatures scuttling across dry plains, their bodies light, their posture shifting toward upright. Yet their anatomy held promise. Stronger hips, longer legs, more efficient lungs. Traits that, in the battles of survival, would soon give them an advantage. The seas too were changing. After the collapse of marine ecosystems in the Permian, the Triassic oceans slowly filled again with new life. Mollusks, ammonites, and early corals returned. New reptiles took to the water. Ichthyosaurs, dolphin-shaped hunters with sharp teeth and powerful tails, and nothosaurs, long-necked predators gliding through shallow seas. These creatures brought energy back to oceans once silent, beginning the transformation into vibrant ecosystems that would define the Mesozoic seas. Even the atmosphere seemed restless. Volcanic activity continued, reshaping landscapes and releasing gases into the skies. Earth's climate, though warming, fluctuated unpredictably. Droughts tested plants and animals alike, while sudden rains triggered floods. In this unstable world, adaptability was the key to survival. And it was precisely this instability that drove evolution forward, rewarding species that could endure change, punishing those that could not. The Triassic was not yet the age of giant dinosaurs we imagine today. Instead, it was an age of beginnings, of experiments. Tiny dinosaurs no larger than dogs appeared in the late Triassic, their quick steps and upright posture hinting at the dominance to come. But for now, they shared the land with other powerful reptiles, synapsids, the mammal-like reptiles that had survived the Permian, and early crocodile relatives who grew into fearsome hunters. The balance of power was unsettled, shifting like the climates themselves. Picture a Triassic landscape, a vast plain under a blazing sun, red rocks shimmering with heat. Scraggly forests of conifers and cycads cluster near a winding river. A herd of small reptilian herbivores grazes nervously, their scaly hides glinting. In the distance, an archosaur predator moves quietly, its body sleek, its limbs pulling it upright. Near the river's edge, a giant amphibian lurks, its wide mouth waiting for prey to stray too close. Above, pterosaurs, small and tentative in these early days, flutter clumsily, finding their place in the skies. It is not yet the world of dinosaurs, but the shadows of their age are lengthening. The Triassic reminds us of a profound truth: from devastation comes renewal. Life, though fragile, is endlessly inventive. Each plant sprouting in parched soil, each reptile adapting to new forms, each tiny dinosaur testing the ground, it was all part of Earth's long recovery. This was an age of possibility, where survival meant creativity, and where the first outlines of the future were being sketched across the red sands of a remade world. In the next part, we will explore how Pangaea shaped the Triassic climate and landscapes, its deserts, monsoons, and coastlines, and how these extremes tested and transformed life during this extraordinary period. To step into the Triassic is to step onto a planet unlike anything we know today. The continents were not scattered and divided, but joined together in a single colossal landmass, Pangaea. Imagine an Earth where all the land stretched as one continuous expanse, from icy poles to fiery equator, surrounded by the vast ocean of Panthalassa. Along its eastern edge, a smaller sea, the Tethys, shimmered between what would one day be Africa, Asia, and Europe. This arrangement gave the Triassic Earth both its unique beauty and its brutal challenges. Pangaea was immense, so immense that much of its interior lay far from any sea. Without oceans to moderate temperatures, these inland regions sweltered under scorching heat by day and froze in bitter cold by night. Rain rarely reached the center of this supercontinent, leaving deserts that stretched for thousands of kilometers. Sand seas rippled beneath blazing suns, broken only by scattered rivers that sometimes dried to dust. Survival in these interior deserts was harsh, favoring reptiles with tough, scaly skin that conserved water and plants like conifers and cycads, hardy enough to withstand the drought. But Pangaea was not all desert. Along its coasts, climates were softer, tempered by the sea's influence. Seasonal monsoons drenched lowlands with torrents of rain, filling wetlands and nourishing dense forests. Here, ferns, horsetails, and ginkgos flourished, creating green havens for amphibians and reptiles. The contrast between dry interiors and lush coasts was stark, a planet of extremes where life was forced to adapt in radically different ways depending on geography. Mountain ranges added drama to this landscape. As tectonic forces tugged at Pangaea's edges, ranges like the early Appalachians and other uplifts created rain shadows, intensifying aridity inland while feeding rivers on their windward sides. Valleys carved between these ranges became cradles for rivers and lakes, where ecosystems clung to water's lifeline. It was in these fertile river valleys that some of the earliest dinosaurs began to appear, darting among cycads and reeds. The seas surrounding Pangaea were equally influential. The Panthalassa Ocean, covering most of the globe, regulated heat, carrying warm currents across vast distances. The Tethys Sea, smaller but crucial, was a nursery for marine life. Ichthyosaurs, nothosaurs, and early plesiosaurs swam its shallows. Coral reefs rebuilt themselves here after the devastation of the Permian, becoming hotspots of biodiversity once again. Along coastlines, salt marshes and mangrove-like ecosystems nurtured amphibians, reptiles, and the first pterosaurs taking hesitant flights above tidal flats. The Triassic atmosphere, thick with volcanic gases, added to the world's extremes. Volcanic eruptions continued to pour carbon dioxide into the skies, driving greenhouse warmth. Yet the vast deserts of Pangaea reflected heat back into the air, creating climates of dizzying fluctuation. Seasons were sharper than in the greenhouse world of the Eocene or the humid Carboniferous swamps. Rainfall patterns were unpredictable. Droughts could linger for years, only to be broken by sudden floods that transformed barren valleys into fertile plains. Plants bore the brunt of these extremes and adapted ingeniously. Conifers developed waxy needles to conserve water. Cycads, with their thick trunks, stored reserves for dry times. Ferns and horsetails grew rapidly after rains, carpeting riverbanks before the next drought came. Seeds became critical survival tools, allowing plants to lie dormant through inhospitable seasons and sprout when conditions allowed. These plant strategies shaped the diets and behaviors of the animals that depended on them, reinforcing the close ties between flora and fauna. For animals, Pangaea's geography dictated survival strategies. In the deserts, reptiles evolved to conserve water and endure heat. Crocodilian ancestors lurked in rare rivers, waiting patiently for prey. In wetter regions, amphibians such as giant temnospondyls thrived, some growing as large as small cars, lurking in lakes and ambushing creatures at the water's edge. Archosaurs, with their upright posture and efficient lungs, had an edge in both desert and forest, setting them apart from sprawling lizard-like competitors. These traits would soon carry them into dominance. Life's distribution across Pangaea also shaped evolution's future. Because all land was connected, species could migrate vast distances without barriers. Early dinosaurs, though still small and rare, could roam widely, their fossils today scattered across South America, North America, Europe, and Africa. This interconnectedness gave evolution a wide canvas, allowing species to spread, adapt, and diversify across an entire supercontinent. Yet Pangaea's unity also carried risk. With few geographic barriers, a change in climate or a wave of extinction could sweep across entire continents at once. In later times, when Pangaea began to fracture, isolation would drive bursts of unique evolution. But in the Triassic, the unity of the land was both a gift and a gamble, offering vast ranges but exposing species to global shifts they could not escape. Picture Pangaea at sunset, a desert plain glowing red under the dying light, broken by jagged mountains in the distance. Herds of small, beaked herbivores shuffle through cycads, their shadows long against the sand. A predator crouches near a rare waterhole, its eyes glinting as dusk falls. Far away on the coastline, the tide pulls back, revealing tidal flats where pterosaurs flap awkwardly into the sky and ichthyosaurs breach in the shallows. Across this vast continent, extremes rule: heat and drought, rain and flood, desert and forest, all bound together in one colossal landmass. The Triassic world was not gentle. It was a place of trials, where survival meant resilience and adaptation. Yet it was precisely these extremes that created the stage for one of the most important evolutionary dramas in history, the rise of the dinosaurs. In the next part, we will explore how early reptiles and archosaurs, ancestors of crocodiles, pterosaurs, and dinosaurs, emerged from this harsh landscape and began reshaping the balance of life. In the wake of the Permian extinction, survival demanded resilience. Amphibians clung to rivers, synapsids, the mammal-like reptiles, struggled to recover, and insects filled the air again. But it was the archosaurs, a group of reptiles that first appeared in the early Triassic, who began to shape the future. Their very name, archosaur, means ruling reptiles. And in time they would indeed rule, not only the Triassic but much of the next 160 million years. Archosaurs were different. Where other reptiles sprawled with limbs splayed sideways, archosaurs stood more upright. Their hips and legs supported their bodies directly beneath them, granting endurance and speed. Their lungs were more efficient, possibly with air sacs that kept oxygen flowing in one direction, much like modern birds. Their skulls bore openings that lightened their heads without weakening them, giving strength without weight. These traits made them adaptable to the harsh Triassic world of deserts, monsoons, and extremes. The earliest archosaurs were varied. Some were small, lightly built insect eaters. Others grew into fearsome predators. Two great branches of archosaurs soon emerged: the pseudosuchians, ancestors of crocodiles, and the ornithodorans, a lineage that would give rise to pterosaurs and dinosaurs. These were not yet the titans of the Jurassic, but their diversity signaled a shift in power. Synapsids, once dominant, were fading, archosaurs were rising. In the hot interiors of Pangaea, pseudosuchians thrived. Some resembled modern crocodiles but with long legs suited for land, sprinting after prey on open ground. Others, like Postosuchus, were massive hunters, walking on both four legs and occasionally two, their jaws lined with serrated teeth. They grew to lengths of 5 meters, apex predators of their time, striking fear into herds of herbivores. Their armor-like scuts, plates embedded in their skin, made them formidable in both attack and defense. Alongside these hunters lived strange herbivores. Eddosaurians, armored like living tanks, browsed low plants with pig-like snouts. Their bodies were covered in heavy plates, protecting them from predators. They may not have been graceful, but they were survivors, spreading across Pangaea's plains and deserts. Other pseudosuchians experimented with niches, some resembling small, fleet-footed hunters, others more aquatic, lurking in rivers and lakes. Meanwhile, the ornithodon line was experimenting with lightness and agility. Small, bipedal forms darted through vegetation, balancing on long tails and snapping at insects. These were the precursors of both dinosaurs and pterosaurs, and their anatomy already hinted at future success. Their bones were lighter, their movements quicker, their posture more upright than their reptilian peers. They were not yet dominant, but they were waiting in the wings. The skies themselves were beginning to stir. By the late Triassic, the first true pterosaurs appeared, fragile yet revolutionary. With wings formed from elongated fingers and membranes of skin, they were the first vertebrates to master powered flight. At first they were small, gliding over lakes and coasts to snatch insects and fish. Though awkward compared to later pterosaurs, they represented a bold evolutionary leap. For the first time since insects took to the air, vertebrates now shared the skies. In the oceans, archosaurs also left their mark. Nothosaurs, sleek marine reptiles with long necks, slid through coastal waters like seals. They hunted fish with quick strikes, their bodies adapted to both land and sea. From them evolved plesiosaurs, who would later dominate Mesozoic seas with their distinctive flippers and elongated necks. Ichthyosaurs, already dolphin-like, became faster, sleeker and more specialized hunters. While not archosaurs themselves, they lived in a marine world shaped by the same resilience and innovation that defined the age. Archosaurs were not alone in this experiment-filled epoch. Synapsids, ancestors of mammals, continued to evolve. Small, furry creatures scuttled in the shadows, their warm-blooded metabolisms and sharp senses giving them endurance in harsh climates. Though overshadowed by reptiles in the Triassic, they held on to niches that would later allow mammals to rise when dinosaurs fell. The balance of power was shifting, but it was not yet permanent. The Triassic was, above all, a time of ecological rebuilding. Plants formed the foundation: conifers, cycads, ginkgos, and ferns spreading across coasts and river valleys. Insects flourished, pollinating and decomposing. Herbivores grazed, predators hunted, scavengers picked the remains. Each adaptation built on another, weaving fragile yet functional ecosystems. Archosaurs, with their speed, efficiency, and variety, began to dominate these webs, shaping the flow of energy across Pangaea. Picture a Triassic river valley. Cycads and conifers line the banks, their roots clinging to the soil. Herds of armored aetosaurs shuffle along, rooting through ferns. Above them, a small, upright reptile darts through reeds, chasing dragonflies. The ground trembles as a massive Postosuchus emerges from the trees, its jaws snapping, scattering the herbivores. Across the river, a pterosaur takes flight, wings beating awkwardly as it climbs into the evening sky. In the distance, thunder rolls, seasonal rains about to sweep across a thirsty land. The world is harsh, but it is alive, filled with motion and experimentation. The rise of archosaurs was not guaranteed, but their combination of endurance, innovation, and adaptability gave them the edge. They did not just survive, they flourished, pushing aside older lineages and setting the stage for dominance. Among their descendants, one branch would eventually become the most famous rulers of all, the dinosaurs. But in these early Triassic days, dinosaurs were still small, waiting for their moment. In the next part, we will follow the story of these earliest dinosaurs, tiny, agile creatures of the late Triassic, and see how they began their climb from obscurity to dominance. When we imagine dinosaurs, we see towering giants. Brachiosaurus lifting its neck toward treetops, Tyrannosaurus rex roaring across plains, or herds of Triceratops moving like armored tanks. Yet the first dinosaurs of the Triassic were nothing like these titans. They were small, fast, lightly built creatures, often no larger than a modern dog. But within their light frames lay the blueprint for one of the most successful lineages in Earth's history. Dinosaurs first appeared around 230 million years ago, in the middle to late Triassic. They evolved from small archosaurs, close relatives of pterosaurs and crocodile ancestors. What set them apart was their posture. Unlike lizards and crocodiles with sprawling gaits, dinosaurs held their legs directly beneath their bodies. This upright stance allowed efficient movement, better balance, and endurance. It meant they could run faster, breathe more easily while moving, and conserve energy, a vital advantage in a harsh, competitive world. The earliest known dinosaurs were humble. One of them, Eoraptor, lived in what is now Argentina about 231 million years ago. Barely a meter tall and weighing less than 10 kilograms, it was a nimble omnivore, probably feeding on insects, small reptiles, and plants. Its sharp teeth and grasping hands show versatility, a creature experimenting with survival strategies. Fossil beds in South America, particularly the Esquigualasto Formation, reveal landscapes where such early dinosaurs lived alongside crocodile-like pseudosuchians, synapsids, and amphibians. Dinosaurs were not rulers here, just one part of a larger caste. Another early dinosaur, Herrerasaurus, also roamed Argentina. Larger than Eoraptor, it reached lengths of 4 to 5 meters, with sharp teeth and claws suggesting a carnivorous diet. It is one of the earliest examples of a predatory dinosaur, a forerunner to the great theropods of later ages. Its agility, upright stance, and speed made it a formidable hunter compared to sprawling reptiles. Though not yet dominant, Herrerasaurus demonstrated the potential locked inside this new lineage. Meanwhile, other early dinosaurs experimented with different diets. Saturnalia, also from South America, was a small, lightly built dinosaur that hints at the future of long-necked sauropods. These first plant eaters were still tiny compared to later giants, but they carried within them the seeds of future evolution. Elongated necks, grasping hands, and digestive adaptations for fibrous plants. The diversity of these small forms shows that even in their beginnings, dinosaurs were already branching into the ecological roles they would later master: predators, herbivores, and omnivores. The rise of these early dinosaurs was not immediate. They shared their ecosystems with powerful pseudosuchians, crocodile-like reptiles that often overshadowed them in size and strength. Apex predators like Postosuchus dominated food chains, while armored herbivores like Aetosaur occupied plant-eating niches. Dinosaurs lived in the margins, often small, opportunistic, and fast. Yet their efficiency, upright posture, active metabolism, and perhaps even warm-blooded traits, gave them a quiet edge. When future extinctions reshaped ecosystems, dinosaurs were poised to seize opportunity. The environments they lived in were unforgiving. The late Triassic landscapes were often dry, with seasonal rains bringing bursts of life followed by long droughts. Herds of reptiles grazed tough cycads and conifers. Rivers swelled in wet seasons, supporting amphibians and fish, only to shrink in droughts, leaving cracked mudflats where scavengers searched for remains. Small dinosaurs like Eoraptor would have darted through cycads and ferns, avoiding larger predators, while hunting insects and small prey. Their survival depended on agility and alertness, traits that would become hallmarks of their lineage. The anatomy of these first dinosaurs reveals much about their future. Their hips were specialized into two main designs that would define all dinosaurs to come. Some, like Herrerasaurus, belonged to the Saurischians or lizard-hipped dinosaurs, a group that included both predatory theropods and long-necked sauropods. Others began experimenting with the ornithischian or bird-hipped design, though true ornithischians would not flourish until later. These hip structures determined locomotion, digestion, and posture, showing how early the foundation for dinosaur success was laid. It is remarkable that such small creatures carried within them the potential to dominate for 160 million years. Yet in the Triassic they were simply survivors in a tough world. Their advantage was not strength or size but adaptability. They could run farther, hunt more efficiently, and exploit niches that heavier reptiles could not. Their evolutionary path was one of patience, waiting for the right moment. Picture a Triassic floodplain. Cycads and ferns cluster near a sluggish river, its banks cracked from recent drought. A group of Eoraptors scurries between plants, chirping softly to one another, scanning for insects. In the distance, a larger Herrerasaurus watches, poised to strike. Suddenly, thunder echoes. A storm breaks, rain pounding the baked earth. The air fills with the calls of amphibians and the flutter of early pterosaurs. Life surges in rhythm with the seasons, and amid this flux, dinosaurs learn to survive. The Triassic was not yet theirs, but their innovations set them apart. Upright stance, efficient breathing, versatile diets, these traits would carry them through trials to come. When the next great extinction struck at the end of the Triassic, these small beginnings would become the key to dominance. Though dinosaurs were emerging in the late Triassic, they were far from alone. The world was alive with a dazzling array of reptiles, many of them far stranger and more imposing than those first small dinosaurs. It was a menagerie of armored tanks, towering predators, and bizarre experiments, creatures that remind us evolution does not move in a straight line but sprawls outward, testing countless forms before settling on the survivors. Among the most distinctive of these were the Aetosaur, heavy-bodied herbivores armored in thick plates. Their backs bristled with rows of bony scuts, each plate ridged and patterned, forming a living shield against predators. Their short, pig-like snouts were perfect for rooting through tough plants, pulling up roots and grazing on low vegetation. They were not graceful, more lumbering tanks than nimble grazers, but their armor made them formidable. Imagine a herd of them shuffling across a Triassic plain, their bodies gleaming in the sun, tails swaying as they grazed among cycads and ferns. Predators thought twice before attacking such living fortresses. At the other end of the spectrum stood the Rauisuchians, towering predators of the Pseudosuchian line. Unlike sprawling crocodiles, these creatures walked with pillar-like legs directly beneath their bodies, some even rising onto two legs for short bursts. Postosuchus was among the largest, growing up to 5 meters long. With serrated teeth and powerful jaws, it was the terror of its ecosystems. Where small dinosaurs darted nervously, Rauisuchians strode with confidence, apex hunters unchallenged by most. Their reign, however, would prove temporary, cut short at the end of the Triassic. The Triassic also teemed with phytosaurs, crocodile-like reptiles that thrived in rivers and wetlands. At first glance, they looked like modern crocodiles. Long snouts, armored backs, ambush hunting in water. But their nostrils, oddly placed near the eyes, betrayed their separate lineage. These predators lay in wait at the water's edge, lunging at fish, amphibians, and any land animals foolish enough to venture too close. In a world of fluctuating climates, rivers and lakes were lifelines, and phytosaurs ruled these habitats with patience and stealth. Then there were the Tanistrophiids, reptiles with bodies modest in size but necks stretching longer than their torsos. Tanistrophius, the most famous, looked almost absurd, with a body the size of a crocodile and a neck 3 times longer. Its lifestyle remains debated. Perhaps it lurked in shallow waters, its long neck letting it snap at fish without moving its bulky body. Whatever its habits, its very existence shows the experimental nature of Triassic evolution. Nature testing extremes, some successful, others short-lived curiosities. Amid these giants and oddities, smaller reptiles filled niches of their own. Rhynchosaurs, squat herbivores with powerful jaws, were abundant grazers, gnawing cycads and conifers with chisel-like beaks. Their success was short but spectacular. They dominated many Triassic landscapes before vanishing abruptly near the end. Lepidosaurs, early relatives of lizards, also appeared, scurrying through undergrowth and establishing a lineage that would quietly persist into the present, eventually giving rise to snakes and geckos. In the skies, the first pterosaurs took to the air. Fragile but groundbreaking, they were the pioneers of vertebrate flight. Their wings, formed by elongated fourth fingers, stretched membranes of skin into sails that carried them aloft. At first small, they glided over rivers, snapping up insects and small fish. Though clumsy by later standards, their presence added a new dimension to Triassic ecosystems. For the first time, vertebrates had joined insects and birds' ancestors in conquering the air. All these creatures coexisted with early dinosaurs, sharing habitats, resources, and dangers. Dinosaurs were small, fast, and upright, but they were not yet dominant. They lived in a world where Rauisuchians were apex predators, Aetosaur armored the plains, Phytosaurs haunted rivers, and Pterosaurs tested the skies. Dinosaurs were simply another branch in this sprawling, experimental tree of life, surviving at the margins of more imposing forms. The competition between these groups was fierce, but it was not always direct. Each creature carved its own ecological niche. Aetosaur grazed low plants, Rhynchosaurs cropped cycads, sauropodomorph dinosaurs browsed slightly higher leaves, and early theropods snatched small prey. Rauisuchians took large herbivores, while Phytosaurs ambushed creatures near water. Ecosystems balanced precariously, like a living mosaic of forms, each filling a role. Yet beneath this balance lay instability. The Triassic was a volatile world, its climate swinging wildly, its continents still restless. Volcanic eruptions periodically shook landscapes, altering ecosystems overnight. Droughts tested plant eaters, floods reset river valleys. Each disruption thinned weaker lineages, leaving space for others to expand. Dinosaurs, small and adaptable, were waiting for their moment. Picture a late Triassic floodplain. A wide river winds between red cliffs, its surface still under a heavy sun. Along its banks, Phytosaurs lurk, only their eyes and nostrils above water. A herd of Aetosaur trudges nearby, their armored backs glinting as they forage among cycads. Suddenly, a Rauisuchian bursts from the shadows, scattering the herd, its jaws snapping shut on one unfortunate grazer. Overhead, a pterosaur glides, circling the commotion, while in the underbrush a small Heterosaurus watches, learning from the chaos. This was not yet the dinosaurs' world, but it was their training ground. The Triassic menagerie reminds us that dominance is never immediate. Dinosaurs did not rise in a straight line. They grew up among giants, predators, and armored rivals. Their eventual success was not guaranteed. It was forged in coexistence, competition, and survival against formidable contemporaries. By the closing chapters of the Triassic, around 220 to 200 million years ago, Earth's ecosystems were richer, more layered, and more dynamic than they had been since the Great Dying at the end of the Permian. Forests of conifers and cycads shaded rivers, ferns carpeted floodplains, and tall horsetails lined wetlands. Grass, which today covers much of the planet, had not yet evolved. Instead, tough, woody plants dominated. The earth was painted in greens of conifers, deep browns of cycads, and the silvery fan leaves of ginkgos swaying in seasonal winds. These plants formed the backbone of the first true dinosaur ecosystems. Small herbivorous dinosaurs, still modest in size compared to later giants, browsed among cycads and ferns. Their upright posture allowed them to move efficiently between patches of vegetation, covering ground more quickly than sprawling reptiles. Some, like early sauropodomorphs, stretched their necks upward to reach leaves beyond the reach of squat rhynchosaurs and aetosaur. This partitioning of food sources reduced direct competition, allowing multiple herbivores to share the same environment. Predators responded to these communities with their own strategies. Early theropods, descendants of forms like Herrerasaurus, became swifter and more agile hunters. They targeted smaller prey, early mammals, lizards, amphibians, and juvenile dinosaurs, leaving larger kills to massive Rauisuchians. The division of prey sizes created layered predator guilds, where each hunter occupied its own level in the food web. Pterosaurs added another dimension, darting after insects and small vertebrates from the skies. The climate of the late Triassic added rhythm to these communities. Vast deserts in Pangaea's interior baked under intense heat, but along coasts and river valleys, monsoons brought seasonal rains. These rains swelled rivers, revived plants, and spurred bursts of animal activity. Amphibians thrived during wet seasons, laying eggs in pools that soon teemed with tadpoles. Herbivores took advantage of fresh plant growth, while predators capitalized on herds congregating near water. When the dry season returned, rivers shrank, vegetation withered, and survival grew harsher. Only the adaptable endured these cycles, and dinosaurs, with their efficient movement and possible warm-blooded metabolism, held an edge. The interaction of plants and animals also shaped landscapes. Herds of aetosaur and rhynchosaurs disturbed soil as they foraged, opening patches for ferns to spread. Dinosaurs, browsing higher vegetation, influenced the growth of cycads and conifers. These feeding pressures created mosaics of habitats, open glades, dense thickets, and riverside forests, each supporting its own communities. Predators tracked these herds, concentrating in fertile valleys during wet seasons, then dispersing when drought drove prey into hiding. Ecosystems pulsed with the rhythm of climate, animals, and plants moving in constant interplay. Fossil beds like those in Arizona's Petrified Forest and South America's Esquigualasto Formation preserve vivid glimpses of these ecosystems. In these ancient deposits, we see evidence of conifer forests turned to stone, scattered bones of aetosaur and early dinosaurs, and footprints frozen in mud that once lined riverbanks. These records show that dinosaurs were not yet abundant but were establishing themselves as integral parts of ecosystems. They were no longer rare novelties. They were members of thriving, interwoven communities. Early dinosaurs like Plateosaurus, one of the best-known sauropodomorphs of the late Triassic, illustrate this transition. Plateosaurus grew up to 9 meters long, a relative giant compared to earlier forms. With its long neck and herbivorous diet, it browsed plants unavailable to lower feeders. Its strong hind limbs allowed it to move efficiently, while grasping hands could pull branches within reach. Though not as massive as later sauropods, Plateosaurus represents the first steps toward the long-necked giants that would dominate the Jurassic. Theropods of the late Triassic, though still small by later standards, became increasingly specialized hunters. Light, hollow bones, grasping claws, and sharp teeth made them efficient predators. Some may have hunted in small groups, coordinating attacks on prey larger than themselves. Their anatomy suggests speed and endurance, qualities essential in open landscapes where bursts of pursuit meant survival. Mammal ancestors, though overshadowed by reptiles, were also part of these ecosystems. Tiny, shrew-like creatures scurried at night, feeding on insects and seeds. Their warm-blooded physiology allowed them to stay active in cooler evenings, avoiding direct competition with reptiles. Though they remained minor players, these mammals laid the groundwork for future success. Picture a late Triassic floodplain at the height of the wet season. Rivers swollen, conifers shimmering under fresh rain, cycads sprouting new growth. Herds of Plateosaurus browse quietly, lifting their necks to strip branches. Nearby, aetosaur root noisily in the mud, their armor clanking as they jostle for space. A small pack of theropods darts through ferns, eyes locked on a juvenile dinosaur that strays too far. Overhead, pterosaurs circle, their wings glinting in filtered sunlight. The air hums with insects, amphibians croak in the pools, and the forest breathes with life. This is not yet the dinosaur empire of the Jurassic, but its outlines are clear. As the dry season follows, rivers shrink to trickles, mud cracks beneath the sun, and many creatures retreat to shade or burrows. The herds scatter and predators struggle, waiting for the rains to return. Yet the dinosaurs, efficient and enduring, continue to thrive, laying the foundation for a future where they will seize the throne. The late Triassic ecosystems were fragile yet resilient, shaped by extremes of climate and populated by an eclectic mix of reptiles, amphibians, and the first true dinosaurs. They were proving grounds where adaptability mattered more than size or strength. Dinosaurs were not yet kings, but they were learning the lessons of survival that would soon make them rulers of Earth. In the next part, we will explore the great transformation at the end of the Triassic, the mass extinction that reshaped life once again, clearing the stage for dinosaurs to rise into dominance in the Jurassic. The Triassic was a period of recovery, innovation, and experimentation. Life that had barely survived the Great Dying at the end of the Permian had clawed its way back, filling ecosystems with armored herbivores, towering predators, pterosaurs in the skies, and the first true dinosaurs. For 50 million years, this fragile balance held. And then, as the Triassic drew to a close, catastrophe struck again. Around 201 million years ago, Earth endured another great extinction event, one that would sweep away many dominant reptiles and leave the dinosaurs poised to inherit the future. The cause of this extinction lay deep beneath the Earth's crust. As Pangaea began to rift apart, splitting into northern and southern halves, enormous volcanic eruptions shook the planet. These eruptions created the Central Atlantic Magmatic Province, CAMP, one of the largest volcanic events in Earth's history. Over a span of less than 1 million years, lava flooded across what is now North America, Europe, Africa, and South America. The scale was staggering, millions of square kilometers drowned in molten rock, leaving behind basalt plateaus that still scar continents today. The environmental consequences were catastrophic. Volcanic eruptions released vast amounts of carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere. The Earth's climate lurched violently between extremes. Sulfur aerosols may have cooled the planet temporarily, plunging ecosystems into sudden chill, while rising CO2 drove long-term warming. Oceans absorbed these gases, becoming acidified and depleted of oxygen. Acid rain fell on forests, damaging plants and altering soils. The result was a cascade of stresses that life could not withstand. Fossil records reveal the scale of loss. Entire groups of reptiles disappeared, including many of the great pseudosuchians. The rauisuchians, once dominant predators, vanished. Phytosaurs, the crocodile-like ambush hunters of rivers, also died out. Many amphibians, already struggling in drier Triassic climates, collapsed further. In the oceans, numerous marine reptiles dwindled and ammonites, once abundant, suffered massive losses. Nearly 50% of all known species perished in this relatively brief geological moment. Yet not all perished. Some lineages endured, often those with traits favoring adaptability. Crocodilomorphs, small relatives of crocodiles, survived perhaps because of their smaller size and generalist habits. Pterosaurs, though fragile, endured as aerial hunters. And most importantly, the dinosaurs weathered the storm. Though still modest in diversity compared to what was to come, dinosaurs had advantages that carried them through. Their upright stance, efficient lungs, and possibly higher metabolisms allowed them to thrive in fluctuating climates. Their varied diets and ecological flexibility gave them resilience. Where larger, less adaptable reptiles fell, dinosaurs endured. Why did dinosaurs survive when so many rivals did not? Part of the answer lies in scale. Many pseudosuchians were large-bodied predators, requiring abundant prey. When ecosystems faltered, their size became a burden. Dinosaurs, smaller and more agile in this era, required less food and could exploit different niches. Some fed on insects, others on small reptiles, still others on plants that persisted through harsh conditions. Their versatility gave them options when ecosystems collapsed. Another advantage may have been their physiology. Evidence suggests that dinosaurs, like modern birds, had highly efficient respiratory systems with air sacs that made oxygen intake more effective. In an atmosphere destabilized by volcanic gases, this adaptation could have made survival easier. Combined with faster growth rates and higher activity levels, dinosaurs may simply have been better suited to the rapidly changing world. The extinction cleared the stage. With Rauisuchians gone, no large land predators remained to challenge dinosaurs. With many herbivorous reptiles vanished, niches opened for sauropodomorphs to expand into giants. By the dawn of the Jurassic, dinosaurs were not just survivors. They were poised to dominate every ecosystem, from forests to plains to coastal shores. The balance of power had shifted forever. Picture the world at the close of the Triassic. Volcanic skies glowing red, rivers choked with ash, forests burned by acid rain. Herds of Aetosaur dwindle, their armored backs disappearing from floodplains. Rauisuchians, once lords of the land, vanish from the fossil record. Phytosaurs sink into extinction, their crocodile-like jaws silenced. And yet, among the turmoil, small dinosaurs persist. Herds of Plateosaurus moving cautiously through scorched valleys, packs of theropods hunting beneath smoke-darkened skies. Out of devastation they endure, their survival securing the next chapter of Earth's story. The end Triassic extinction was not as total as the Permian, nor as famous as the later Cretaceous event that would end the dinosaurs themselves. But it was pivotal. It removed competitors and predators that had overshadowed dinosaurs, leaving them free to radiate into the Jurassic and beyond. It was, in essence, the crucible that forged the age of dinosaurs. This moment in history reminds us of a recurring truth. Extinction is both an ending and a beginning. For those who vanish, the story stops. For those who endure, new opportunities arise. The dinosaurs' rise was not inevitable. It was shaped by chance, by physiology, by resilience in the face of catastrophe. Had the Rauisuchians or Phytosaurs endured, history might have been very different. But the dice of extinction rolled in favor of dinosaurs, and they would dominate for the next 135 million years. When the Triassic ended in fire and ash, half of Earth's known species were gone. Rauisuchians, Aetosaur, and Phytosaurs, all once dominant, vanished. Amphibians shrank in diversity, marine ecosystems faltered, and landscapes bore the scars of volcanic upheaval. Yet the world did not remain silent. Out of this devastation came renewal, as life always does. And among the survivors, dinosaurs seized their moment. The Jurassic period was dawning, and with it, the age of dinosaurs in full. In the immediate aftermath of the extinction, ecosystems were fragile. Volcanic eruptions had disrupted climates, raising carbon dioxide and warming the globe. Rainfall patterns shifted, seas rose, and forests struggled to recover. But with many competitors gone, open ecological niches beckoned. Dinosaurs, once modest players, spread rapidly into these gaps. Where armored Aetosaur had grazed, sauropodomorphs now browsed. Where Rauisuchians had hunted, theropods stepped forward. The balance of ecosystems tilted decisively toward these upright, efficient reptiles. Sauropodomorphs, already present in the late Triassic, began their march toward gigantism. Species like Plateosaurus grew more widespread, their long necks allowing them to feed on high branches as well as low shrubs. Within a few million years, their descendants would evolve into the towering sauropods of the Jurassic, creatures like Diplodocus and Brachiosaurus, whose size alone redefined what herbivores could be. This transformation began in the crucible of the Triassic-Jurassic transition, when opportunity rewarded those who could reach farther and eat more efficiently. Theropods too expanded rapidly. Small predators like Coelophysis, slender and agile, multiplied across continents. Their sharp teeth and swift legs made them formidable hunters of smaller prey. As the Jurassic advanced, some theropods grew larger, evolving into apex predators. Traits first seen in Triassic forms, upright stance, hollow bones, grasping claws, proved perfect for domination. Within a short geological time, theropods ranged from fox-sized hunters to lion-sized killers, occupying every predatory niche. The end Triassic also set the stage for the earliest ornithischians, the bird-hipped dinosaurs. Though rare in the Triassic, this lineage would later give rise to stegosaurs, ankylosaurs, and hadrosaurs. Their success lay ahead, but their survival through the extinction ensured that dinosaur diversity would not rest solely on sauropods and theropods. The seeds of their future were preserved in these fragile beginnings. Marine life also rebounded. Though many species had perished, ichthyosaurs and plesiosaurs endured, adapting to the changing seas. Ammonites, though devastated, rebounded spectacularly, becoming one of the most abundant marine invertebrates of the Jurassic. Coral reefs recovered in new forms, creating habitats that once again teemed with fish and marine reptiles. The oceans, shaken but resilient, regained their vibrancy, ensuring food chains strong enough to support giants in both sea and land. The skies, too, retained their pioneers. Pterosaurs, small and delicate in the Triassic, weathered the extinction. Freed from competitors, they expanded in form and size. By the Jurassic, they would range from sparrow-sized insect hunters to wingspans rivaling small planes. Their fragile bones, rarely preserved, remind us how improbable their survival was. Yet they endured, ensuring the skies remained a Triassic legacy carried forward. Plants, the quiet architects of ecosystems, were also transformed. Conifers rebounded after volcanic disruptions, becoming the dominant trees of Jurassic forests. Cycads and ginkgos spread widely, while ferns reclaimed disturbed landscapes with rapid growth. Flowering plants were still millions of years away, but the gymnosperm forests of the Jurassic provided abundant resources for herbivores. These resilient plants stitched ecosystems back together, feeding the expanding herds of dinosaurs. Why were dinosaurs so successful in the aftermath? Partly it was timing. Their rise coincided with the collapse of their competitors. But it was also adaptation. Dinosaurs had upright postures, efficient lungs, active metabolisms, and rapid growth rates. These traits gave them resilience during environmental stress and competitiveness afterward. They could recover faster, reproduce effectively, and exploit diverse niches. In contrast, many Triassic reptiles had specialized too narrowly, unable to pivot when conditions changed. The Triassic-Jurassic transition, then, was more than an extinction. It was a turning point. Dinosaurs stepped into vacated roles and began to diversify in ways that would carry them through 135 million years of dominance. This was their coronation, the moment they passed from the shadows into the spotlight, from marginal survivors to rulers of the Earth. Picture an early Jurassic Valley, only a few million years after the Triassic collapse. Fresh forests of conifers rise against basalt cliffs left by volcanic floods. Ferns carpet the ground, reclaiming soils scarred by ash. A herd of early sauropodomorphs browses along the riverbank, their long necks swaying gently as they strip branches. Nearby, a pack of Coelophysis darts among ferns, hunting lizards and small mammals. Overhead, pterosaurs wheel gracefully, their cries echoing against cliffs. The Rauisuchians and Aetosaur are gone, their time ended. In their place, dinosaurs flourish, spreading into every role the Earth has to offer. The end of the Triassic, then, was not simply an ending. It was a transformation. In its wake, ecosystems rebuilt themselves, and dinosaurs emerged as the heirs of resilience. The stage was set for the Jurassic, where dinosaurs would grow larger, more diverse, and more dominant than ever imagined. When we think of the Triassic, it is tempting to see it only as a prelude, a mere introduction to the Jurassic and Cretaceous, when dinosaurs reached their full glory. But to view it this way is to miss its deeper importance. The Triassic was not just a prologue, it was a crucible. It was the era that set the rules of the Mesozoic, testing life in extremes, wiping the slate with extinction, and selecting the survivors that would dominate for millions of years. Its legacy is written into the very fabric of Earth's later history. First, the Triassic proved that life could recover even from the most devastating blow. The Permian extinction had nearly ended the story, but in the Triassic, ecosystems rebuilt. Forests regrew, rivers filled with amphibians, seas blossomed with ammonites and fish, and reptiles flourished into bewildering diversity. This recovery was not quick, nor was it complete, but it was remarkable. It showed that life, though fragile, was also resilient. Each Triassic ecosystem was a reminder that nature does not surrender, it reinvents. Second, the Triassic was an age of experimentation. Evolution in this period branched into forms strange and bold: armored Aetosaur, long-necked Tanystropheus, towering Rauisuchians, crocodile-like Phytosaurs, and delicate pterosaurs fluttering into the skies. Some of these experiments failed, ending in extinction, but others endured, laying foundations for future lineages. Crocodiles, birds, mammals, and dinosaurs all trace their deep roots to this era of creative exploration. Without the Triassic, the Mesozoic would have had no script to follow. Third, the Triassic demonstrated the power of climate and geography in shaping destiny. The supercontinent Pangaea created vast deserts, seasonal monsoons, and extremes of heat and drought. Survival here demanded innovation. Archosaurs with upright postures thrived where sprawling reptiles faltered. Small mammals survived by hiding in shadows and emerging at night. Pterosaurs seized the air, exploiting insects that flourished after rains. The Triassic taught evolution to reward flexibility, and those lessons reverberated through the ages. Fourth, the Triassic provided the stage for the dinosaurs' rise. Though they began small and inconspicuous, their traits, efficient breathing, upright stance, versatility in diet, gave them quiet advantages. They coexisted with powerful rivals like Rauisuchians and Phytosaurs, but when catastrophe struck at the Triassic's end, dinosaurs endured while their competitors fell. The extinction was their opening, but the Triassic had already forged the tools they needed to succeed. In this way, the Triassic did not just birth dinosaurs, it prepared them for empire. The Triassic also shaped the oceans. Marine reptiles like ichthyosaurs and plesiosaurs took their first evolutionary steps here, adapting to life in water with streamlined bodies and paddle-like limbs. Ammonites rebounded from Permian devastation, setting patterns of abundance that would continue until the end of the Cretaceous. Coral reefs reassembled in new forms, providing habitats for fish and invertebrates. The seas of the Triassic were laboratories, testing designs that would dominate oceans for millions of years. The skies, too, were forever changed. The first pterosaurs took flight, fragile but determined. Though small and clumsy compared to later species, they proved vertebrates could conquer the air. This breakthrough opened evolutionary possibilities that would echo later in birds, descendants of dinosaurs. The Triassic gave wings to the Mesozoic, literally and figuratively. The Triassic's legacy is also cautionary. Twice in its span, extinction reshaped the world. First at its beginning when life struggled to recover from the Great Dying, and again at its end, when massive volcanism triggered collapse. These extinctions remind us that dominance is fragile, that no group, however mighty, is immune to Earth's shifting forces. Rauisuchians, once apex predators, vanished. Aetosaur, armored but inflexible, fell. Phytosaurs, crocodile-like rulers of rivers, disappeared entirely. Their loss cleared the way for others, but it underscores a truth we still face: change spares no certainty. Imagine the Triassic not as a single world but as a bridge. On one side lies the ancient Earth of the Paleozoic, ruled by synapsids and sprawling reptiles. On the other side lies the Mesozoic Earth of dinosaurs, pterosaurs and marine giants. The Triassic is that narrow, storm-tossed span connecting them, a bridge built of survival, invention and transformation. Without it, neither side could have met. Picture a Triassic dawn, the sun rising over Pangaea, casting long shadows on deserts and forests. In a river valley, a herd of Plateosaurus browses, their necks swaying among conifers. A small pack of theropods stalks lizards in the underbrush. Overhead, a pterosaur glides unsteadily, its wings catching the morning air. Far away, smoke rises from volcanic fissures, reminders of the Earth's restlessness. It is a world fragile yet determined, filled with creatures whose names few remember, yet whose legacy is written in every later age. The Triassic may not dazzle with the giants of later periods, but its importance cannot be overstated. It was the testing ground, the proving field, the place where resilience and innovation were forged. Its creatures may seem strange, even primitive, but they were pioneers. And its extinctions, though brutal, cleared the paths that led to dinosaurs' reign. To understand the Triassic world, we must look beyond reptiles and rivers, beyond predators and prey, and turn our eyes to the quiet architects of ecosystems, the plants. For all their strangeness and drama, the reptiles of the Triassic depended utterly on the green foundation beneath their feet. From towering conifers to sprawling ferns, Triassic plants shaped the landscapes, determined the diets of herbivores, and provided the raw energy that sustained ecosystems. Without them, the dinosaurs' rise would never have been possible. The Triassic plant world looked both familiar and alien. Familiar because many of its lineages still live today: conifers, ginkgos, ferns, cycads. Alien because grasses and flowering plants, the mainstays of modern ecosystems, had not yet evolved. The fields and meadows we know did not exist. Instead, the earth was dominated by forests of gymnosperms and patches of hardy ferns. The palette was darker, more muted, with forests of needle-leaved conifers and thick, waxy cycads stretching across plains and hills. Conifers were among the most important players. These hardy trees thrived in the dry, seasonal climates of Pangaea. Their needle-like leaves conserved water, while their tough seeds withstood droughts. Towering conifers formed forests in coastal zones and upland areas, creating shade and stabilizing soils. For herbivores like Plateosaurus, conifers were both food and shelter, their branches stripped of needles and bark by hungry jaws. These forests also influenced climates locally, drawing rainfall and shaping microhabitats where amphibians and smaller reptiles found refuge. Cycads, another Triassic hallmark, dotted landscapes like ancient palm trees. With thick trunks and crowns of stiff, leathery leaves, they resembled miniature palm groves. Their tough leaves and starchy seeds were food for early herbivores, while their root systems partnered with nitrogen-fixing bacteria, enriching soils. Cycads spread widely across Pangaea, from deserts to coastal forests, their resilience making them one of the most successful plant groups of the age. To walk through a Triassic plain was to walk among cycads, their fan-like crowns shimmering under the sun. Ginkgos, with their distinctive fan-shaped leaves, also took root in Triassic forests. Though today represented by a single species, in the Triassic they were more diverse. Ginkgos were hardy, able to withstand poor soils and changing climates. Their broad leaves captured sunlight efficiently, while their seeds nourished small animals. These trees stood like sentinels in mixed forests, their leaves fluttering in seasonal winds. Even then, ginkgos seemed timeless, their form little changed over 200 million years. Ferns and horsetails were the opportunists of the Triassic. After fires or floods, they were often the first to reclaim disturbed ground, spreading quickly with spores. They thrived along rivers, in wetlands, and in understories beneath taller trees. Though small compared to cycads or conifers, they were vital. Amphibians laid eggs among their stems, insects fed on their fronds, and small reptiles scurried through their thickets. Ferns made ecosystems dynamic, filling gaps left by disturbance and providing continuity amid change. Together, these plants shaped the diets and behaviors of animals. Herbivores evolved to exploit different layers of vegetation. Rhynchosaurs cropped cycads close to the ground, Aetosaur rooted among ferns and conifers, and sauropodomorphs stretched upward to strip branches. This vertical partitioning of food reduced competition, allowing diverse herbivores to coexist. Carnivores in turn tracked these herds, their survival dependent on the energy flowing first from sun to plant, then from plant to prey. Plants also influenced the earth itself. Vast conifer forests absorbed carbon dioxide, moderating climates in their regions. Cycad roots enriched soils, while fallen leaves decomposed into fertile layers. Vegetation stabilized riverbanks, reducing erosion and shaped water cycles by drawing rainfall. The Triassic was not just a reptile's world, it was a green engine, plants driving everything from atmosphere to ecosystem structure. The absence of flowering plants made the Triassic landscapes quieter in some ways. No fields of bright blossoms, no buzzing bees. Pollination was simpler, relying mostly on wind or primitive insects. Fruits as we know them did not exist. Seeds were bare, often dispersed by wind or by animals swallowing and excreting them. Yet this simplicity worked. Cycads and conifers spread across continents, their slow but steady strategies building stability in an otherwise volatile world. Picture a Triassic forest at dawn. Conifers rise tall, their dark needles silhouetted against a red sky. Beneath them, cycads cluster, their crowns catching the morning light. Ferns carpet the ground in green mosaics, while ginkgos stand at the forest edge, their fan-shaped leaves trembling in the breeze. A small herd of Plateosaurus browses quietly, stripping branches with steady bites. In the undergrowth, early mammals scurry among ferns, while dragonflies flit above a damp clearing. The air smells of resin and damp earth, the forest alive with quiet energy. The plants of the Triassic left a lasting legacy. Conifers would remain dominant for the rest of the Mesozoic, feeding sauropods and shading predators. Cycads would flourish alongside dinosaurs, their seeds nourishing herbivores. Ginkgos, resilient and unchanging, would survive through extinctions to the present day. Ferns, ever opportunistic, would continue reclaiming disturbed land. Though overshadowed in memory by dinosaurs, these plants were the true foundation of the age, the green scaffolding on which all else depended. The Triassic plant world teaches us a lesson. Power often lies not in spectacle but in persistence. Dinosaurs rose and fell, predators came and went, but conifers and cycads endured, shaping ecosystems quietly, steadily for millions of years. Without them, the dinosaur story could not have been written. The ground of the Triassic was alive with reptiles, amphibians, and the earliest dinosaurs, and its rivers teemed with amphibians and crocodile-like predators. But above, the air was no longer empty. It was alive with wings, buzzing insects, darting dragonflies, and, for the first time, vertebrates learning to master flight. The Triassic skies marked a turning point in Earth's history, when the air itself became an ecosystem, filled with new possibilities and challenges. Insects had ruled the air long before the Triassic. Dragonflies, beetles, and primitive flies had been soaring since the Carboniferous. But in the Triassic, insect life rebounded after the Permian extinction, once again filling ecosystems with buzzing, humming energy. Dragonflies, with wingspans of several inches, hunted smaller insects on the wing. Beetles thrived, breaking down plant matter and spreading across habitats. Early relatives of grasshoppers and cicadas emerged, filling forests with chirps and songs. The skies, once silent after catastrophe, now thrummed with life. But the most revolutionary flyers of the Triassic were the pterosaurs, the first vertebrates to achieve powered flight. Appearing in the late Triassic, these reptiles were delicate yet bold, their wings formed from skin membranes stretched over elongated fourth fingers. At first they were small, some with wingspans no larger than a raven's. Yet their bones reveal the adaptations that would carry them through the next 150 million years. Hollow, lightweight skeletons, keeled breastbones for strong flight muscles, and large brains attuned to balance and vision. The earliest known pterosaur, Eudomorphodon, lived around 210 million years ago. Its jaws bristled with sharp teeth, perfect for catching fish and insects. Fossil evidence suggests it was already a skilled flyer, with wings strong enough to flap and glide. How these reptiles launched into the skies remains debated. Some scientists believe they clambered up trees or cliffs, leaping into the air like bats. Others suggest they could launch from the ground using powerful limbs, springing upward before beating their wings. Whatever the method, their success is clear. They opened the skies to vertebrates for the very first time. Pterosaurs were fragile compared to many Triassic reptiles, yet they endured. Their hollow bones rarely fossilized well, making their remains scarce, but what we do find shows diversity even in these early days. Some species hunted fish along rivers and coasts, their wings beating as they skimmed the surface. Others may have hunted insects in open plains, darting with precision. Though still small, they were pioneers, laying claim to an aerial world that no reptile had touched before. Birds, as we know them, had not yet evolved, but their ancestors, the small, nimble theropod dinosaurs, were already experimenting with agility and balance on land. The foundations for avian flight were being prepared quietly in the background. The Triassic did not yet host birds, but it set the stage for their eventual rise by proving vertebrates could survive and thrive in the skies. Insects and pterosaurs likely shared complex relationships. Large dragonflies and predatory beetles provided food for small pterosaurs. In turn, pterosaurs may have influenced insect behavior, driving them to evolve faster flight or camouflage. These aerial interactions mirrored the predator-prey relationships unfolding on the ground, but with new dynamics unique to the skies. The air was no longer a passive space. It was a battlefield, a hunting ground, and a highway between ecosystems. The skies also connected land and water. Pterosaurs hunted fish in rivers, linking aquatic food webs with terrestrial ones. Insects pollinated cycads and ginkgos, shaping plant reproduction. Spore-bearing ferns relied on winds to spread their offspring, their tiny packets drifting across valleys. The air carried seeds, spores, and animals alike, weaving ecosystems together in unseen but powerful ways. The Triassic atmosphere itself was different from today. Oxygen levels were lower than in earlier ages, around 15 to 17% compared to today's 21%. This meant flight was energetically costly, favoring lightweight bodies and efficient breathing systems. Pterosaurs met this challenge with hollow bones and large lung capacities, traits that paralleled those of modern birds. Insects, smaller than their Carboniferous ancestors, adapted too as reduced oxygen limited the giant forms of earlier ages. The skies of the Triassic were not forgiving, but life innovated to meet their demands. Picture a Triassic dusk. The air is warm and heavy, carrying the scent of resin from conifers. In a clearing, insects hum, dragonflies darting after midges. Suddenly, a shadow sweeps across the ferns. A Eudomorphodon, wings glinting in the low sun, swoops down to snatch prey. Its cries echo faintly, a sound unlike anything before. Above the river, beetles scatter as another pterosaur schemes the surface, jaws snapping at fish. The skies are alive, layered with buzzing, beating, fluttering life, a chorus that connects earth, water, and air. The significance of this aerial revolution cannot be overstated. By conquering the skies, pterosaurs and insects expanded ecosystems into a new dimension. They opened possibilities for dispersal, predation, and migration that reshaped life's balance. The Triassic taught evolution that the air, like land and sea, could be mastered, and once mastered, it became indispensable. The skies of the Triassic remind us that revolutions often begin small. A dragonfly catching an insect, a pterosaur gliding over a river. These moments seem modest compared to the roar of a tyrannosaurus or the sweep of a sauropod's neck. Yet without them, the future of birds, bats, and countless flying creatures would never have unfolded. The Triassic gave life wings, and the world was never the same. While deserts stretched across Pangaea and reptiles tested their strength on land and in the skies, another transformation was unfolding beneath the waves. The oceans, devastated during the Permian extinction, were slowly reborn in the Triassic. These waters, once eerily barren, became home to new ecosystems teeming with ammonites, fishes, and marine reptiles that would dominate for the next 150 million years. To step into the Triassic seas is to witness resilience on a planetary scale, a quiet but powerful recovery that set the stage for the oceans of the Mesozoic. In the earliest Triassic, the seas were nearly silent. Coral reefs, once thriving in the Paleozoic, had collapsed. Many species of brachiopods and trilobites had vanished forever. Fish populations had been reduced to fragile remnants. But slowly life returned. By the Middle Triassic, reefs began to rebuild, this time anchored not by ancient tabulate corals but by new coral lineages and sponges. Ammonites, survivors of the Permian disaster, exploded in diversity, their coiled shells once again filling the seas. These creatures became icons of Triassic waters, drifting and darting through currents, prey for predators above them. Marine reptiles were the true stars of this aquatic rebirth. The Triassic was their dawn, when lineages that would later dominate the seas first appeared and flourished. Among them were the ichthyosaurs, dolphin-like reptiles that evolved from land ancestors and quickly adapted to marine life. Early ichthyosaurs like Mixosaurus retained somewhat lizard-like bodies, but later forms became sleek and streamlined, built for speed and endurance. Their large eyes, among the biggest of any animal, helped them hunt in dim waters, chasing fish and squid. Some reached lengths of over 10 meters, apex predators of their realm. Another group, the nothosaurs, patrolled coastal shallows. With long necks, slender bodies, and paddle-like limbs, they glided through water like seals, diving after fish. They were semi-aquatic, still capable of moving clumsily on land, perhaps to lay eggs or bask. Nothosaurs later gave rise to plesiosaurs, whose descendants would dominate Jurassic and Cretaceous seas with their distinctive long necks and powerful flippers. But in the Triassic they were still experiments, part reptile, part marine mammal and lifestyle. Smaller marine reptiles, such as placodonts, explored yet other strategies. Stocky and armored, some resembled giant marine turtles, crushing shellfish with blunt teeth. Their heavy bodies and protective plates made them slow, but in shallow lagoons they thrived, grazing on hard-shelled prey. Each group of reptiles carved a different niche, together transforming oceans into multi-layered ecosystems. Fish, too, diversified in the Triassic. Bony fishes and sharks both rebounded, their populations growing in tandem with ammonites and other invertebrates. Rays, modern-looking fish with flat bodies, began their evolutionary journey here. With reefs and food chains recovering, the seas regained their complexity, each layer, plankton, fish, reptiles, interdependent. The Tethys Sea, nestled between the northern and southern halves of Pangaea, was a hub of this marine rebirth. Its warm, shallow waters nurtured reefs, ammonites, and marine reptiles. Fossil deposits from the Tethys reveal a rich variety of species, a reminder that while much of Pangaea's land was arid, its seas teemed with life. The Tethys would remain crucial throughout the Mesozoic, its ecosystems feeding and sustaining countless lineages. The oceans of the Triassic were also shaped by climate. Volcanic activity warmed seas, while fluctuations in oxygen levels created challenges for deep-dwelling life. In some regions, dead zones persisted, areas where oxygen was too scarce to support much. Yet in shallower waters, productivity was high. The very stresses of the Triassic oceans drove innovation. Creatures with efficient lungs, sharp eyesight, or specialized diets flourished where generalists failed. Predator-prey dynamics in these seas mirrored those on land. Ichthyosaurs hunted fish and squid, nothosaurs preyed on smaller reptiles, placodonts crushed shellfish, ammonites and fish fed on plankton. Each adaptation was answered by another: faster swimmers, better eyesight, harder shells. This arms race made ecosystems robust, each tier sharpening the next. Picture a Triassic reef. Sunlight ripples through clear water, illuminating coral structures rebuilt from ruin. Ammonites drift gracefully, their shells gleaming. Schools of fish weave between coral branches, scattering as a nothosaur darts through, jaws snapping. Farther out, an ichthyosaur bursts upward, its sleek body slicing the surface as it gulps down prey. Placodonts graze slowly in the shallows, their armored backs blending with rocks. The water hums with life, color, motion and sound, vibrant once more after near silence. The Triassic seas remind us of life's resilience. Just as land ecosystems reinvented themselves with archosaurs and dinosaurs, the oceans reinvented themselves with marine reptiles, ammonites and new corals. These waters, born of survival, carried forward into the Jurassic, where ichthyosaurs, plesiosaurs and other giants would reign supreme. But the Triassic oceans also foreshadowed fragility. Twice in the period, fluctuations in climate and oxygen drove marine die-offs, reminding us that ecosystems are never invulnerable. At the end of the Triassic, volcanic eruptions disrupted seas as well as land, triggering extinctions that reset marine life once again. Ammonites nearly vanished, though a few lineages endured. Many nothosaurs disappeared, leaving plesiosaurs to inherit their mantle. Even ichthyosaurs faced decline, though they would recover. The seas, like the land, were tested by fire. Still, the legacy of the Triassic oceans is clear. They gave the world marine reptiles that would define the Mesozoic seas. They restored coral reefs as vital habitats. They wove ammonites into food webs as both prey and predators. And they connected Earth's story, reminding us that recovery after catastrophe is not just possible. It is inevitable when life is given time. When we picture the Triassic, our imagination is captured by armored Aetosaur, prowling Rauisuchians, and the first true dinosaurs. Yet hidden in the undergrowth, scurrying between ferns or burrowing beneath roots, lived another lineage, the ancestors of mammals. Though overshadowed by reptilian giants, these small creatures carried within them the traits that would one day define a new age, the age of mammals. Their story in the Triassic is one of survival, quiet innovation, and resilience in the shadows. Mammal ancestors trace their roots to the synapsids, a group that had once ruled the Earth during the Permian. Synapsids included the mighty Dimetrodon and the therapsids, often called mammal-like reptiles. But the Permian extinction devastated them, leaving only a handful of lineages clinging to survival. In the Triassic, these survivors evolved into cynodonts, the direct ancestors of mammals. Cynodonts were small to medium-sized, often no larger than foxes or rabbits, and they adapted cleverly to the harsh Triassic landscapes. One key innovation was their teeth. Unlike reptiles whose teeth were often uniform, cynodonts had differentiated teeth: incisors for nipping, canines for tearing, and molars for grinding. This variety allowed them to eat a wide range of foods: insects, plants, small reptiles, making them versatile in fluctuating environments. Their jaws also evolved stronger muscles, improving chewing efficiency. These changes were subtle but crucial, laying the foundation for the mammalian ability to exploit diverse diets. Cynodonts also showed evidence of warm-blooded traits. Their bones suggest higher metabolic rates, and some likely had fur to regulate body temperature. In a world of extreme climates, this gave them an edge. While reptiles slowed in cold nights or seasonal chills, cynodonts could remain active, foraging under the cover of darkness. This nocturnal lifestyle helped them avoid larger predators and carve out niches where reptiles did not compete. Their skeletons reveal further mammalian hallmarks. Limbs were more upright, supporting efficient movement. Their skulls had openings for larger brains, hinting at increased sensory processing. Their inner ear bones were evolving toward the delicate structures that later enabled mammals' acute hearing. Each adaptation was small, but together they formed a mosaic pointing toward the mammals to come. Among the Triassic cynodonts was Thrinaxodon, a small, burrowing creature from South Africa. Fossils show it nestled in tunnels, suggesting it lived underground to escape predators and regulate temperature. Its sharp teeth and flexible diet made it a successful insectivore and small prey hunter. Cynognathus, larger and more robust, roamed South America and Africa, its powerful jaws hinting at a predatory lifestyle. These animals were not dominant in their ecosystems, but they endured, adapting to niches overlooked by reptiles. The behavior of these proto-mammals may have been as important as their anatomy. Fossil evidence suggests some cynodonts cared for their young, guarding nests and perhaps nursing them with primitive forms of milk. This parental investment, rare among reptiles, increased survival rates of offspring, strengthening their lineage across generations. In harsh climates and unstable ecosystems, such strategies mattered. Those small cynodonts shaped ecosystems subtly. They preyed on insects, helping regulate populations. They provided food for small theropods and pterosaurs. Their burrows aerated soils, affecting plant growth. In ways quiet but profound, they were part of the Triassic web of life, threads often overlooked but vital. The mammal ancestors' greatest achievement, however, was survival. While Rauisuchians and Aetosaur would vanish at the end of the Triassic, cynodonts endured. Their adaptability, omnivorous diets, burrowing habits, nocturnal activity, gave them resilience. They did not need to dominate, they only needed to persist. And persist they did, carrying the synapsid legacy into the Jurassic, where true mammals would appear. Picture a Triassic night. The sun has set over Pangaea, leaving the desert cool and silent. A small Thrinaxodon emerges from its burrow, whiskers twitching, fur catching the moonlight. It scurries through ferns, snapping up beetles and grubs. In the distance, the ground trembles as a Plateosaurus herd shifts in sleep, while a predator prowls the riverbank. But in the underbrush, the little cynodont moves unnoticed, its sharp teeth working quickly, its ears pricked to every sound. Though tiny compared to its neighbors, it represents the future, a lineage that will one day inherit the earth. The story of Triassic mammals reminds us that greatness is not always measured in size or spectacle. Sometimes, it is measured in endurance, in the quiet persistence of traits that prove invaluable later. Dinosaurs may have ruled the Mesozoic, but mammals carried the seeds of resilience, waiting patiently for their time. In the next part, we will shift focus again, exploring the Triassic climate in greater detail, how volcanic eruptions, shifting atmospheres, and Pangaea's vastness shaped environments and drove evolution. The Triassic period was more than just a time of evolutionary experiments. It was an age defined by climate. From its fiery beginning after the Great Dying to its catastrophic close marked by mass extinction, the Triassic was shaped at every step by forces in the atmosphere, the oceans, and deep within the Earth's crust. Life's struggles and triumphs during this era cannot be understood without understanding the climate that framed them. The foundation of Triassic climate lay in the arrangement of continents. With all land fused into Pangaea, stretching from pole to pole, global circulation patterns were unlike anything we know today. The sheer size of this supercontinent meant that its vast interior lay far from oceans. Without seas to moderate temperature, the continental heart baked in searing heat by day and froze by night. Rain rarely reached these central deserts, leaving immense arid regions where only the hardiest plants and reptiles survived. By contrast, coastal zones experienced monsoons. Warm seas fueled intense seasonal rains, which flooded lowlands and fed lush forests. These monsoons alternated with long dry seasons, creating rhythms of abundance and scarcity. For animals and plants, life became a dance with the seasons. Breed and feed during rains, endure and conserve during droughts. Ecosystems pulsed with this cycle, rewarding flexibility and punishing rigidity. Temperatures overall were high. The early Triassic began in greenhouse conditions, fueled by carbon dioxide released during the Permian's volcanic upheavals. Average global temperatures were significantly warmer than today, and polar regions lacked permanent ice. Forests stretched much farther toward the poles than in the modern world. Crocodile-like reptiles basked in regions that now lie frozen. Yet this warmth was not stable. It fluctuated in sharp swings, with cooler intervals interrupting the greenhouse. These shifts tested species, rewarding those that could adapt to both abundance and scarcity. Volcanism was one of the key drivers of these fluctuations. Throughout the Triassic, tectonic forces pulled at Pangaea's seams, and massive volcanic eruptions reshaped climates. These eruptions injected greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, warming the planet, but also released sulfur aerosols that could temporarily cool it. The result was instability, periods of sudden warming followed by abrupt cooling. Ecosystems often had little time to adjust, and such swings likely triggered localized extinctions. Atmospheric oxygen levels were also lower than in later eras, perhaps hovering around 15 to 17% compared to today's 21. This scarcity made survival more difficult, particularly for large animals. Efficient lungs became critical, and archosaurs with advanced respiratory systems had an advantage. Small mammals and reptiles survived by remaining active at night or in burrows, where oxygen demands were lower. Life, in essence, was shaped by an atmosphere that demanded innovation simply to breathe. The Triassic climate also influenced oceans. Warmer waters stratified, reducing circulation and limiting oxygen in deeper layers. In some regions this created dead zones, where little could survive. Shallow seas, however, flourished with ammonites, fish, and marine reptiles. The contrast between barren depths and lively shallows mirrored the land's extremes: harsh deserts inland, vibrant monsoonal forests along coasts. Life in both realms was patchy, concentrated where conditions allowed. Periodic crises punctuated the Triassic climate. The Carnian pluvial episode, around 230 million years ago, was one such event. For a brief span, increased rainfall transformed many regions, expanding rivers and wetlands. This wetter interval spurred diversification among plants and animals, including early dinosaurs. But when it ended, aridity returned, eliminating species unable to cope with the reversal. These swings remind us that climate change is not always gradual. It can be sudden, reshaping ecosystems in mere thousands of years. At the end of the Triassic, climate turmoil reached its peak. The rifting of Pangaea unleashed volcanic outpourings across what is now the Atlantic region. The Central Atlantic Magmatic Province, CAMP, flooded continents with lava and pumped enormous amounts of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. The result was one of Earth's great extinction events, killing off nearly half of all known species. Forests withered, oceans acidified, and dominant reptiles like Rawasuchians and phytosaurs vanished. Dinosaurs, small but resilient, survived, and in their survival they inherited the Earth. For animals, living in this volatile climate required constant adjustment. Herbivores migrated with the seasons, following vegetation between wet and dry zones. Predators tracked these herds, adapting to scarcity during droughts. Plants developed tough leaves and protective coatings to withstand aridity. Insects evolved strategies to exploit seasonal booms, laying eggs that could survive dry spells. Each organism became part of a grand negotiation with the climate, adjusting, shifting, and reinventing to match its rhythms. Picture a Triassic landscape under the grip of climate extremes. The interior of Pangaea, endless red desert stretching to the horizon, cycads clustered along a rare oasis. A herd of Aetosaur gathers at the water's edge, armored backs glinting under a merciless sun. Above, a thunderhead swells, promising the first rain in months. When it bursts, the ground transforms, Dusty plains sprout green, rivers swell, and amphibians emerge from burrows to croak and breed. In the distance, smoke rises from a volcanic fissure, a reminder that stability is fleeting. The climate of the Triassic was not gentle, but it forged resilience in everything it touched. The legacy of this climate is profound. It shaped the evolution of archosaurs, favoring upright, efficient reptiles. It forced mammals' ancestors into the shadows, where they honed traits that later ensured success. It prepared dinosaurs to thrive in fluctuating conditions, a skill that would serve them for over 100 million years. The Triassic climate was harsh, but it was also creative, sculpting the traits that define the Mesozoic world. Every ecosystem is built on attention, the struggle between those who eat plants and those who eat them, between grazers and hunters, prey and predators. In the Triassic, this tension reached a new intensity. The end of the Permian had wiped out many older lineages, leaving fresh evolutionary space. Into this vacuum came archosaurs, cynodonts, amphibians, and the first dinosaurs, all vying for survival. Their contest shaped anatomy, behavior, and destiny, turning landscapes into living arenas where survival was the only prize. The herbivores of the Triassic were diverse and inventive. Attosaur, with their pig-like snouts and bony armor, are perhaps the best example of defense through fortification. Their backs were lined with rows of osteoderms, bony plates embedded in skin, forming shields against attack. These reptiles lumbered through floodplains in herds, rooting for tough plants, their defenses making them unappealing to many predators. Yet even armor had its limits. Rauisuchians and theropods still tried to pierce their defenses when hunger grew desperate. Other herbivores relied on speed and alertness. Early sauropodomorphs, ancestors of the long-necked giants to come, were relatively small in the Triassic. With elongated necks and agile limbs, they could feed on plants at different heights and flee predators with quick strides. Their size was not yet a deterrent, but their mobility allowed escape. Rhynchosaurs, squat reptiles with powerful beaks, dominated some ecosystems as grazers, consuming cycads and ferns in bulk. Their sheer numbers may have been their best defense. When prey is plentiful, predators cannot consume them all. Predators responded with equal innovation. The Rauisuchians, apex hunters of the Triassic, were power and terror incarnate. Some walked on four pillar-like legs, others rose on two to sprint. Their jaws bristled with serrated teeth, slicing through flesh with ease. With sizes rivaling small dinosaurs, they hunted Aetosaur, Rhynchosaurs, and Sauropodomorphs alike. Ambush was their strategy, bursting from cover or waterholes to strike with devastating force. They were the lions of their day, feared by all that grazed. Smaller predators filled other niches. Theropod dinosaurs like Coelophysis were leaner, faster, and more agile than Rauisuchians. Their light skeletons and long legs made them pursuit hunters, chasing lizards, small mammals, and juvenile dinosaurs. Their grasping claws and sharp teeth were suited for quick kills. They hunted in packs at times, overwhelming prey with numbers. Unlike Rauisuchians, they did not rely on brute strength but on speed, strategy, and adaptability, traits that would one day make theropods dominant hunters. The phytosaurs, crocodile-like reptiles of rivers and wetlands, used stealth and patience. With nostrils high on their heads, they could lie nearly invisible at the water's surface, waiting for prey to drink. When herbivores approached, they lunged, dragging victims into the depths. Their method mirrored modern crocodiles, showing how ancient strategies can endure across ages. Herbivores evolved wariness, approaching rivers cautiously, moving in groups to reduce risk. Even the skies played a role in this contest. Early pterosaurs, though small, may have snatched insects or even tiny vertebrates from the ground. Insects, too, participated in their own arms race. Plants developed tougher leaves and insects evolved stronger jaws. Some plants partnered with wind for seed dispersal, reducing dependence on herbivores, while cycads developed toxins to deter overgrazing. Every layer of life was part of the contest, from towering reptiles to the smallest fronds. Predator and prey shaped one another in visible ways. Attenborough grew heavier armor because predators grew stronger jaws. Theropods became faster because herbivores became quicker. Cynodonts survived in part because they shifted to nocturnal habits, avoiding predators active by day. Each adaptation was not isolated but connected, each response provoking a counter-response. Evolution in the Triassic was not a straight line but a spiral, predator and prey coiling around each other in endless escalation. These dynamics also influenced behavior. Herding became a common defense among herbivores. By moving in groups, they reduced the chance of any individual being caught. Juveniles stayed at the center, protected by adults. Predators, in turn, adapted to target the weak, sick, or isolated, honing instincts that endure in carnivores today. Burrowing became another strategy. Small cynodonts and reptiles dug into soils to hide from hunters or escape heat. Predators learned to wait patiently near burrow entrances, ready to strike when occupants emerged. Picture a Triassic floodplain during the dry season. A herd of attenborough huddles near a dwindling waterhole, their armor clinking as they shuffle closer to mud-stained banks. A phytosaur lurks below the surface, eyes fixed on the herd. Suddenly, a Rawasukian bursts from the trees, scattering the group in panic. One etosaur strays too far, and the predator's jaws clamp shut, dragging it down. Yet in the chaos, a small Coelophysis darts in, seizing a lizard disturbed by the commotion. The scene is layered, prey fleeing, predators competing, scavengers waiting their turn. It is the Triassic distilled, survival as contest, life as interplay. The predator-prey arms race of the Triassic left lasting marks. It honed the efficiency of theropod dinosaurs, preparing them for Jurassic dominance. It pushed herbivores toward gigantism, armor, and herding. It shaped ecosystems into dynamic, balanced webs, where every advantage met a counter. And it carried forward lessons still visible today in lions chasing antelope, crocodiles lurking in rivers, or birds flocking for protection. The Triassic did not invent these dynamics, but it refined them, embedding them deeply into Earth's evolutionary memory. For all its strangeness, the Triassic lives on not in memory but in stone. Its deserts, rivers, and seas are long gone, but their bones, leaves, and tracks remain, pressed into rock as testimony to an age of renewal and experimentation. Fossils are more than relics. They are windows, letting us peer across 200 million years into ecosystems that once pulsed with life. In the Triassic, these windows are scattered across the globe, each one preserving a fragment of a world both familiar and alien. One of the richest of these is the Esquigualasto Formation in northwestern Argentina, often called the Valley of the Moon for its barren, otherworldly landscape today. Here, fossils of some of the earliest known dinosaurs were unearthed, Eoraptor Herrerasaurus, and Panphagia, small agile creatures that hint at the beginnings of a dynasty. Preserved alongside them are remains of cynodonts, Attenborough, and Rawasukians, showing dinosaurs not in isolation but within full ecosystems. Ash layers from ancient volcanoes provide precise dating, making Esquigualasto a cornerstone of Triassic science. It is here we see dinosaurs not yet rulers but survivors, mingling with the last of their rivals. North America holds another treasure, the Petrified Forest National Park in Arizona. Its rainbow-colored fossilized trees are world-famous, conifers turned to stone through mineralization over millions of years. Scattered among these trunks are fossils of phytosaurs, Attenborough, and early dinosaurs. The park reveals Triassic floodplains, where rivers shifted and buried forests in silt, preserving them in exquisite detail. Footprints of reptiles still mark the ancient mud, frozen mid-step. To walk among the petrified logs today is to stand in the shadow of a vanished forest, the silence broken only by echoes of creatures long gone. Europe, too, preserves Triassic marvels. The late Triassic quarries of Germany have yielded delicate fossils of early pterosaurs like Eudomorphodon and marine reptiles such as nothosaurs and placodonts. Limestone deposits capture even fine details, wing membranes, skin impressions, stomach contents, offering a rare glimpse of soft tissues seldom preserved. These fossils remind us that pterosaurs and marine reptiles were not abstract reconstructions but living animals, with skin, muscles, and behaviors etched faintly into stone. The Tethys Sea, once stretching across Europe, Asia, and Africa, left rich marine deposits full of ammonites, fish, and ichthyosaurs. In places like Monte San Giorgio in Switzerland and Italy, entire communities are preserved, schools of fish, predators mid-hunt, plants drifting in currents. This site, a UNESCO World Heritage location, is a true snapshot of a Triassic ecosystem, capturing the flow of life as though the seas froze in time. In Africa, the Karoo Basin of South Africa bridges the Permian and Triassic, recording the aftermath of the Great Dying. Cynodont burrows fossilized in mud reveal creatures huddled together, perhaps perishing during droughts. Skeletons of Cynognathus and Thrinaxodon show early mammal ancestors enduring harsh climates. The Karoo's fossils remind us of survival's fragility, of small animals digging into soils to escape a hostile world. Even China contributes extraordinary finds. Fossils from the Middle Triassic of Yunnan province include marine reptiles like Mixosaurus and early ichthyosaurs, perfectly preserved in limestone beds. Some specimens show embryos inside, offering the first evidence of live birth in marine reptiles. Such discoveries reveal intimate details of life cycles, behaviors carried out millions of years ago yet recognizable today. Beyond bones and shells, the Triassic left behind trace fossils, footprints, burrows, coprolites, fossilized dung. These records speak where skeletons are silent. Trackways in Poland reveal herds of small dinosaurs moving together, hinting at early social behavior. Burrows in South Africa show cynodonts' underground refuges. Coprolites, studied under microscopes, reveal diets of fish, plants, or insects, connecting predators and prey. These traces prove that life is more than skeletons. It is action, interaction, and survival, all pressed into stone. The Triassic fossil record also highlights absence. Some lineages appear suddenly with little record of transition, perhaps because soft-bodied ancestors left no trace. Others vanish abruptly, their last fossils marking extinction's moment. These gaps are as telling as the finds themselves, reminding us that the story of life is always incomplete, glimpsed only in fragments. Still, the fossils of the Triassic are remarkable for what they do preserve. The dawn of dinosaurs, the rise of pterosaurs, the rebirth of marine life, the persistence of mammals' ancestors. They allow scientists to reconstruct climates, ecosystems, and behaviors. Isotopes in bones reveal diets and habitats. Growth rings in petrified wood reveal seasonal rhythms. Microscopic details in teeth reveal how creatures fed. Together, these clues rebuild worlds otherwise lost. Picture a Triassic riverbank reconstructed from fossils. Conifers and cycads line the water, their pollen captured in ancient sediments. Footprints press into mud, later hardened into stone. A small dinosaur darts after insects, its bones later entombed in a flood layer. In the water, a phytosaur lurks, its remains settling into silt after death. Over millions of years, minerals replace bone and wood, preserving them until discovery. Each fossil, humble or grand, is a messenger from this world, carried across deep time. The Triassic fossil record is not just a scientific resource. It is a reminder of impermanence. Forests turn to stone, creatures turn to bone, moments turn to rock. Yet from these fragments, we glimpse a living world that once thrived against odds. The fossils whisper of survival, innovation, and extinction, of lives as real as ours, bound forever in Earth's memory. The Triassic Earth was dominated by a single, colossal landmass, Pangaea. To understand this age, we must imagine a world where all continents, Africa, North and South America, Europe, Asia and Australia, were fused into one. Stretching from the icy south to the warm tropics and all the way to the northern pole, Pangaea was a supercontinent like no other, and it shaped the destiny of life during the Triassic in profound ways. At the start of the Triassic, Pangaea was firmly assembled. Its sheer size gave it extremes: vast deserts at the center, humid forests near coasts, and seasonal monsoons along its margins. No mountain chain or sea divided its heartlands. A traveler could, in theory, have walked from modern-day Chile across to China without ever crossing an ocean. Yet this unity was also a trap. The further inland one went, the harsher the climate. With no oceans to moderate temperatures, interiors baked under relentless heat with little rainfall. These deserts were among the most inhospitable environments Earth had ever seen. Around Pangaea stretched the Panthalassa Ocean, a single global sea that covered most of Earth's surface. Along its eastern margin lay the Tethys Sea, a warm tropical body of water that served as a cradle for marine life. It was in the Tethys that ichthyosaurs and nothosaurs flourished, and ammonites swirled in abundance. The Tethys was also a gateway, connecting ecosystems from east to west, spreading species across continents and fueling biodiversity. Its reefs, fish and reptiles contrasted sharply with the barren deserts of Pangaea's heart. Geography shaped not only climate but also evolution. With all continents joined, animals could disperse widely. Early dinosaurs, pterosaurs and mammal ancestors roamed across vast ranges, spreading quickly. Fossils of similar species are found today in South America, Africa, Europe and Asia, testifying to the connectivity of Triassic ecosystems. This lack of barriers fostered early diversification but also meant vulnerability. When climate or catastrophe struck, the effects rippled across the globe. Mountain ranges too played their part. The central spine of Pangaea was marked by long uplifts formed as tectonic plates pressed together. These ranges shaped rainfall patterns, creating rain shadows that intensified aridity in continental interiors. Rivers flowed outward from these uplands, carving fertile valleys where plants and animals gathered. It was along such rivers that many Triassic fossil beds formed, preserving floodplains where herds grazed and predators hunted. By the late Triassic, Pangaea was beginning to change. Tectonic forces tugged at its seams, pulling apart what would become the Atlantic Ocean. Volcanic rifts cracked the supercontinent, releasing lava and gases. These geological changes heralded the breakup of Pangaea, though the process would take tens of millions of years. The initial rifting was catastrophic, unleashing the eruptions that triggered the end Triassic extinction. Geography was not static, it was restless, shaping both opportunity and disaster. The geography of Pangaea also meant migration was essential. Seasonal shifts forced animals to move vast distances in search of water and food. Herds of herbivores tracked rivers, while predators followed. This mobility favored animals with endurance and adaptability. Dinosaurs, with efficient lungs and upright gaits, were particularly suited to long-distance travel. Their ability to move with ease across Pangaea may have contributed to their survival and eventual dominance. For plants, geography was equally decisive. Cycads and conifers spread across Pangaea, thriving in both deserts and coastal forests. Ginkgos grew along upland slopes while ferns colonized floodplains. Because seeds and spores could disperse widely without continental barriers, plant species often had vast ranges. This uniformity created consistent habitats across thousands of kilometers, making the world strangely unified compared to today's patchwork of continents. Picture the Triassic world from above, a colossal supercontinent stretching across the globe, deserts glowing red in the interior, green ribbons of forests hugging coasts, and a shimmering blue Tethys Sea curving along its margin. Rivers wind like silver threads through dusty plains. Volcanoes smoke along fault lines, hinting at the fractures to come. Herds of reptiles move across valleys, their tracks stamped into mud that will harden into stone. Overhead, pterosaurs glide along coastlines, while in the tethys, ichthyosaurs breach, scattering fish shoals. It is a unified, vast yet unstable world. The unity of Pangaea was both gift and risk. It allowed rapid dispersal, connecting ecosystems into a global network. But it also meant catastrophe was global. When volcanic eruptions disrupted climate, no ocean barriers or continental divides shielded ecosystems. Extinction swept across continents at once, hitting life hard. In this sense, geography magnified both resilience and vulnerability. The breakup of Pangaea, which began in the late Triassic, would eventually diversify ecosystems by isolating continents. But in the Triassic itself, its vastness was the defining stage on which life acted. Every predator, every herbivore, every plant was shaped by the size, extremes and restlessness of this supercontinent. The geography of Pangaea left a legacy still visible today. The Atlantic Ocean, born from Triassic rifts, continues to widen. Basalt plateaus in Africa, Europe, and the Americas bear witness to eruptions that ended the Triassic. Fossils scattered across continents remind us that these lands were once united. And modern ecosystems still echo Triassic patterns. Deserts in continental interiors, monsoons along coasts, biodiversity flourishing in tropical seas. When we reconstruct ancient worlds, it is easy to see only skeletons, jaws and claws, armor and teeth. But life is never bones alone. Survival depends as much on behavior as on body shape, how animals move, feed, protect their young and live alongside others. In the Triassic, amid harsh climates and powerful predators, behaviors mattered deeply. Here, in the first great ecosystems of the Mesozoic, we find evidence of herding, nesting, parental care, and cooperation, strategies that gave species an edge in a world of constant challenge. The herbivores of the Triassic often lived in groups. Trackways preserved in Poland and Argentina show parallel lines of footprints, suggesting that small dinosaurs and even earlier archosaurs traveled together. Herding brought safety, more eyes to watch for predators, strength in numbers, and protection for the young. In herds of Plateosaurus, juveniles likely clustered at the center, shielded by larger adults, while the group as a whole moved across floodplains in search of cycads and ferns. Such behavior, still seen today in antelope or elephants, may have its roots here in the Triassic's shifting landscapes. Predators, too, adapted their behaviors. Small theropods like Coelophysis may have hunted in coordinated groups. Fossil beds in New Mexico show clusters of their bones together, perhaps evidence of pack living. While the exact nature of their cooperation is debated, it is plausible that they hunted in numbers, targeting smaller reptiles or juvenile herbivores. If so, the Triassic had already witnessed the birth of strategies later perfected by wolves and lions, predators using teamwork, not just strength, to succeed. Beyond hunting and herding, there is evidence of parental care among Triassic animals. Cynodonts, the ancestors of mammals, are especially compelling. Fossils from South Africa show adult cynodonts preserved in burrows alongside young, hinting at family groups. These creatures may have nursed their offspring with milk-like secretions and guarded them until they could survive alone. This investment in young, rare among reptiles, was a strategy that increased survival, ensuring that even in unstable climates, lineages could persist. In such care we see the foreshadowing of the mammalian way of life, where nurturing became as important as hunting or foraging. Some dinosaurs, too, may have begun experimenting with nesting behaviors in the Triassic. Though clearer evidence appears later, in the Jurassic and Cretaceous, Triassic sites suggest communal nesting grounds where eggs were laid in shallow scrapes of soil or sand. Eggs, vulnerable to predators and climate, demanded protection. Whether through concealment, group defense, or attentive parents, reproductive strategies shaped survival. In a world where mortality was high, the ability to safeguard the next generation mattered as much as armor or speed. Amphibians and reptiles of rivers also developed behaviors tuned to survival. Phytosaurs, crocodile-like ambush predators, likely used stealth and patience, lying motionless in water for hours waiting for prey. Their hunting strategy was not brute force alone, but the discipline to strike at just the right moment. Herbivores responded with caution, approaching water in groups, wary of unseen dangers. This predator-prey interaction shaped daily life, forcing constant vigilance and wariness. Triassic behaviors extended beyond hunting and protection. Burrowing was a widespread strategy. Cynodonts dug into soils to escape heat, predators, and drought. Some amphibians may have burrowed to survive dry seasons, emerging only when rains returned. Even Aetosaur, armored though they were, may have rooted with snouts, disturbing soils in search of roots. Each burrow was more than shelter. It was a microhabitat influencing soil aeration, plant growth, and insect life. The Triassic landscape, then, was pockmarked not only by footprints but also by hidden tunnels of survival. Communication, too, was likely present. While we cannot hear Triassic calls, skeletal structures suggest possibilities. Pterosaurs had air sacs that may have supported vocalizations, their cries carrying across lagoons. Theropods with resonant skull cavities may have growled or hissed to warn rivals. Herbivores may have used body language, tail swishes, head bobs, to coordinate movement. These signals, whether vocal or physical, allowed species to live and act together, reducing conflict and increasing cohesion. Picture a Triassic river valley at dawn. A herd of Plateosaurus stirs, juveniles nudging close to adults as the group prepares to move. Across the river, a pack of Coelophysis watches, their slender bodies poised, each waiting for the signal to strike. In burrows beneath the ferns, cynodont families huddle, young nestled against parents. Overhead, a pterosaur wheels, its cry echoing across the valley. The air is alive not just with movement but with intention, with choices, behaviors, and interactions that turn a collection of creatures into a living community. The importance of behavior in the Triassic cannot be overstated. Anatomical traits gave animals potential, but behavior determined how they used that potential. Herding turned vulnerable individuals into stronger groups. Parental care ensured survival beyond a single generation. Hunting cooperation allowed small predators to punch above their weight. Burrowing, communication, and vigilance provided resilience in climates of scarcity and threat. These strategies were not accidents, they were products of selection as vital as teeth or armor. The legacy of Triassic behaviors carried forward. Mammals inherited parental care and nocturnal habits from cynodont ancestors. Dinosaurs refined herding and nesting into complex social systems, some species guarding eggs and young. Predators honed group hunting, a strategy later echoed in mammals and birds. Even plants benefited from animal behaviors, as seeds were dispersed by grazers and insects carried pollen. Behavior, born in the Triassic crucible, became one of evolution's most powerful tools. Though the Triassic was marked by the unity of Pangaea, not all regions were the same. Vast deserts stretched across the interior, while coastlines hosted forests and lagoons. Mountain ranges carved rain shadows, while tropical seas lapped against eastern shores. Within this single supercontinent lay many worlds, each with its own climate, plants, and animals. To walk across Pangaea would have been to cross deserts, forests, swamps, and reefs, encountering a kaleidoscope of life along the way. South America was a cradle of dinosaurs. Fossil beds in Argentina and Brazil, such as the Esquigualasto and Santa Maria formations, preserve some of the earliest known dinosaurs. Here lived Eoraptor, Herosaurus, and Saturnalia, small, nimble creatures that represent the dawn of a dynasty. Alongside them roamed cynodonts, Rauisuchians, and Aetosaur, creating balanced ecosystems where dinosaurs were not yet dominant but were rising. The humid valleys of South America, watered by seasonal rains, became laboratories of innovation, producing lineages that would spread across the globe. North America, by contrast, preserves the grandeur of Triassic forests and floodplains. In what is now Arizona, the petrified forest reveals conifers turned to stone, their trunks lying across colorful badlands. Here lived phytosaurs lurking in rivers, armored aetosaur grazing in herds, and early theropods stalking floodplains. Fossilized trackways show small dinosaurs moving in groups, while bone beds record mass deaths, perhaps from drought or flood. The Triassic of North America was one of contrasts. Lush river valleys bordered by vast deserts, a landscape of both abundance and hardship. Europe tells another story, one of seas and lagoons. Along the margins of the Tethys, marine reptiles flourished. In places like Monte San Giorgio in Switzerland, nothosaurs, placodonts, and early ichthyosaurs are preserved in exquisite detail. Some fossils even show embryos inside mothers, evidence of live birth in marine reptiles. Inland, small dinosaurs and early pterosaurs darted among forests of cycads and ginkgos. Europe's Triassic was a patchwork, coastal seas rich in marine life, uplands with forests and rivers, and dry basins with reptiles adapted to scarcity. Africa preserves the resilience of mammal ancestors. In the Karoo Basin of South Africa, fossils capture cynodonts huddled in burrows, cynognathus prowling floodplains, and amphibians enduring seasonal droughts. These fossils span the Permian-Triassic boundary, showing the devastation of the Great Dying and the gradual recovery afterward. By the Middle Triassic, Africa hosted diverse archosaurs, from armored herbivores to predatory rauisuchians, while its burrowing mammals' ancestors survived in the margins. Africa was a land of endurance, where survivors clung to life and adapted to change. Asia, vast and varied, offered yet more diversity. In China, Yunnan's Middle Triassic deposits reveal beautifully preserved ichthyosaurs, some caught in the act of giving birth. In Xinjiang, fossils show desert-adapted reptiles living alongside early dinosaurs. India, still fused with Africa and Pangaea, hosted cynodonts and reptiles in its floodplains. Mongolia, further north, was a land of harsher climates, where smaller reptiles and amphibians dominated. Asia's Triassic was as broad as its geography, marine marvels in the south, desert survivors in the north, and everything in between. Even Australia, though less well documented, preserves Triassic fossils of amphibians and reptiles, reminding us that life reached every corner of Pangaea. In Antarctica, once connected to southern continents, fossils of early reptiles and plants show that even polar regions, though warmer than today, hosted forests and animal life. The Triassic world was global in scope, its ecosystems stretching from equator to pole. This regional diversity, though framed by the unity of Pangaea, was shaped by geography and climate. The interior deserts of Pangaea were harsh and sparsely populated, but coasts teemed with life. The Tethys Sea linked ecosystems across continents, spreading ammonites and marine reptiles. Mountains created localized climates, while rivers sustained fertile floodplains. Each region produced its own combinations of species, contributing to the overall richness of the Triassic biosphere. Picture a journey across Pangaea. In South America, herds of Plateosaurus move through cycads, watched by predators. Crossing into North America, you find forests of conifers turned to stone, phytosaurs lurking in rivers. In Europe, shallow seas ripple with ichthyosaurs and placodonts grazing on shellfish. In Africa, cynodonts huddle in burrows, mothers guarding their young. In Asia, a female ichthyosaur labors in shallow water, giving birth to live young. And in Antarctica, cycads grow under long summer suns, with reptiles basking along riversides. It is one world but many landscapes, each with its own voice in the chorus of the Triassic. The global spread of similar fossils reminds us of Pangaea's connectivity. Species traveled freely, dispersing across continents. But the differences between regions highlight the power of local conditions to shape evolution. In South America, dinosaurs gained early ground. In Europe, marine reptiles flourished. In Africa, mammal ancestors persisted. Each piece was part of a larger mosaic, the Triassic world as diverse as it was unified. The regional worlds of the Triassic teach us that survival is never uniform. Some places nurture innovation, others preserve resilience. Together, they formed the stage on which the Mesozoic would unfold, dinosaurs stepping from South American valleys onto a global throne, marine reptiles from Tethys seas spreading across oceans, mammals from African burrows preparing for a distant future. The Triassic spanned roughly 50 million years, but its story was not a steady march. It was punctuated by upheavals, periods of sudden climate change, ecological collapse, and mass extinction. These crises acted as turning points, pruning old lineages, clearing space for new ones, and reshaping the trajectory of life. Two stand out in particular: the Carnian pluvial episode, a time of unusual rainfall and biodiversity shifts, and the end Triassic extinction, one of the great die-offs in Earth's history. Together, they defined the Triassic and prepared the way for the Jurassic world. The Carnian pluvial episode, CPE, unfolded around 230 million years ago in the middle of the Triassic. For millions of years, much of Pangaea's interior had been locked in arid climates, with vast deserts dominating. Then abruptly rainfall increased across wide regions. Geological records show evidence of sudden humidity. Lake sediments thickened, river systems expanded, and plant pollen indicates bursts of growth. The dry plains of Pangaea blossomed into greener, wetter landscapes. This change reshaped ecosystems dramatically. Amphibians, which had struggled in arid Triassic climates, resurged in rivers and wetlands. Plants spread widely, with ferns carpeting newly damp soils. Insects diversified to exploit the fresh growth. Herbivores followed, finding abundant food. And in this fertile window, dinosaurs began their quiet expansion. Fossils from the CPE show a marked increase in dinosaur diversity, suggesting that wetter climates favored their spread. By opening habitats and boosting resources, the CPE may have provided the spark that launched dinosaurs onto a global stage. But the episode also brought disruption. Marine environments suffered as increased rainfall carried sediments and nutrients into seas, destabilizing ecosystems. Some lineages of marine reptiles declined, while ammonites shifted in diversity. The sudden climate shift acted as both gift and challenge, fostering some groups while harming others. The CPE reminds us that even positive change can bring casualties. After the CPE, climates returned to aridity, but the world was different. Dinosaurs had gained ground, establishing themselves as significant herbivores and predators. Archosaurs diversified further, while cynodonts adapted to niches left by vanished species. The CPE was not a mass extinction, but it was a reset button, altering ecosystems and accelerating evolutionary paths. The second turning point, the end Triassic extinction, was far more devastating. Around 201 million years ago, as the Triassic drew to a close, Earth was shaken by massive volcanic eruptions linked to the rifting of Pangaea. These eruptions created the Central Atlantic Magmatic Province, CAMP, flooding continents with lava and releasing enormous amounts of carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere. The result was chaos: greenhouse warming, acid rain, and ocean acidification. Ecosystems buckled under the strain. Up to half of all known species vanished. Many large reptiles that had dominated the Triassic, Rauisuchians, Aetosaur, Phytosaurs, disappeared. Amphibians suffered further declines. Marine life collapsed in many regions, with ammonites and reptiles experiencing major losses. The extinction struck hard and fast in geological terms, within less than 1 million years. It was one of Earth's great die-offs, rivaled only by the end Permian and end Cretaceous events. Yet not all was lost. Crocodilomorphs, small relatives of modern crocodiles, survived, adapting to niches left open by their larger kin. Pterosaurs, fragile but efficient flyers, endured. Mammal ancestors, small and versatile, persisted in the shadows. And most importantly, dinosaurs survived. Their adaptability, upright stance, efficient breathing, diverse diets, gave them resilience. With their rivals gone, they spread rapidly into vacant niches. The extinction, catastrophic for many, was the coronation moment for dinosaurs, setting the stage for the Jurassic and Cretaceous dominance. These turning points remind us that evolution is not a straight road but a winding path shaped by crisis. The Carnian pluvial episode opened new opportunities, favoring flexibility and innovation. The end Triassic extinction cleared ecosystems with brutal finality, rewarding survivors with empty landscapes to fill. Together they acted as both accelerators and filters, guiding life's direction through chance and catastrophe. Picture the Carnian pluvial episode. A dusty plain transformed into a wetland, cycads bursting into green, rivers swelling with frogs and fish, insects buzzing in abundance. Small dinosaurs dart among ferns, thriving in this newfound abundance. Then picture the end of the Triassic. Skies dark with volcanic haze, rain acidified, forests withering, rivers choked with ash. Rauisuchians collapse, Aetosaur vanish, and Phytosaurs sink into silence. Yet in this devastation, herds of small dinosaurs persist, walking into the future unchallenged. The turning points of the Triassic are reminders of resilience and fragility intertwined. Life thrives in stability but often transforms in crisis. Without the CPE, dinosaurs might never have gained their early advantage. Without the end Triassic extinction, they might never have achieved dominance. What seems like random upheaval is, in deep time, the engine of change.